Hello and welcome back. It's season 5 of Design Perspectives. I'm your host, Gail M. Davis, and today we're diving into a subject that is both deeply personal and universally relevant: how design impacts mental wellness. I am so excited to have our guests today. They are absolutely amazing. I'm going to give you their bio in a minute, but I just want to tell you how we got here. A few months ago, I shared a post on social media where I got real about something so many of us feel but rarely say out loud: that sometimes life is too much. I talked about sensory overload, the pressures of daily life, and how I just needed a break. The response was overwhelming. So many of you said, "Yes, I feel this too." That post reminded me just how deeply our environments affect our emotions. Imagine walking into your home after a long, stressful day, and instead of feeling relaxed, you feel tense. The lighting is harsh, the clutter overwhelming. Now picture stepping into a space designed specifically to soothe you. Today, we have three incredible guests joining us, each bringing a unique perspective on how design can nurture mental wellness. Dr. Sally Augustin, a leading environmental psychologist and author of Designology. She's here to help us understand how psychology and science influence the way we interact with our spaces. Ryan Anderson, Vice President of Global Research and Insights at MillerKnoll. Ryan has spent decades researching how we can design workspaces that actually make us feel and perform better. Founder and editor of Textile, Saana Baker, has a deep passion for the emotional power of textiles and how they transform spaces. What we're going to talk about today is designing for mental wellness. Ryan, I'll start with you first. With many companies shifting from hybrid work to mandatory return to office policies, what are organizations like MillerKnoll doing, and what are you seeing other companies implement to enhance mental wellness in the workplace?
Gail, thank you for having me. It's a great question, and I'm glad you were brave and posted that so that we could have this conversation. Our team, and we're a research organization within a larger group of companies that focus on furniture and textiles, et cetera. We have the chance to advise a lot of organizations in thinking about their spaces. And we know that flexible working certainly has its benefits. We also understand why organizations want to, have their people spend more time together. Where we've focused our energies is helping them to think about what it looks like to build really positive relationships. We know that just because people are doing so much through screen-based interactions, that there's increased burnout, increased social isolation, loneliness. There's a decrease in what's known as psychological safety, or that sense that we can really be ourselves and speak our minds. But I think the trick is forcing people to be someplace and having it feel like a very controlling or supervisory experience is not necessarily the path towards more, empowerment and psychological safety and well-being. So what we're doing mostly is helping people to recognize that the design of their spaces can go beyond just supporting certain activities. They can really be designed to strengthen relationships. We know that people consistently cite wanting to spend higher quality time with others as the most desirable thing in the office. But a lot of spaces weren't designed for it. They're a sea of cubicles or benching at individual desks. And we could claim somehow that that's super collaborative or social, but that's just really not the case. We can take a look, however, at other approaches to workplace design, focus on the sort of positive interactions that can bring people together. And instead of forcing people in, really nurture healthier, really positive interactions that cause people to not just return to the space, but to attach to it, to reattach to it over time, which is a more sustainable approach.
I took a deep breath when you said all that because it just resonated so well with me. I'm like, oh, he's speaking my love language.
We don't want people to feel like the office is a tool of control. We want them to see it as a place where they can experience deep connection and meaningful interaction. And while that takes a little bit more diligence, it's the right path towards having offices that are alive and vibrant long term, not just for a short term return to office.
I love that. Dr. Sally, in your book, Designology, you discuss place types. Could you explain what these are and how understanding one's place type, which I love, can guide the creation of places that support mental wellness.
Place types tie into the personality profile of users. And when you're in a space that aligns with your personality, all sorts of good things happen. Your mood improves, your cognitive performance improves, that kind of thing. So the place types relate to how extroverted or introverted, how conscientious and how open to experience anybody who's using design happens to be. And they've proved very useful in terms of helping individuals and groups customize the spaces and places where they find themselves to optimize their performance, etc. And we can talk about groups as well as individuals because people with similar personalities tend to do the same sort of work. So therefore, we can generalize and create a place for cost accountants because cost accountants will usually have one specific sort of personality factors.
Saana, let's talk about textiles. What should designers keep in mind when selecting fabrics and materials to create spaces that feel safe, soothing, and inviting?
I think that the number one aspect is that they need to take into account who they're designing for. So the client is centered here. Different people have different needs. I love the idea of the place types and the personality types. Things that are deeply comforting to one person might be off-putting to another. So really diving into the aesthetics and the material needs of the client to me is key. And I have a story about this. I have a friend that comes and visits my house sometimes, and she calls white the color of shame. And to her, there's nothing worse than to have a white towel because, it shows the makeup and everything. And when she comes, she's like, can I have the gray set? But for other people, white is the perfect color for a bathroom. It's the perfect color for a towel. You can have it pristine and perfect. So understanding what your own needs are and what the needs of your clients are can help support everyday activities in a way that helps make people feel safe.
It's interesting to hear you talk about white because as a psychologist, as a neuroscientist, when I see objects, walls, etc., that are white, I always think of that as an opportunity missed because, via use of surface colors, you can put people in different mindsets, etc., that can help them, live the life they've planned, succeed at the activities that are underway. So when you just, have a white surface, it's like, damn, could have tried something there, could have used it to your advantage, and you let it go.
It's funny, I was watching an influencer on TikTok the other night, and I was having an anxiety attack because her whole house was white. And I was like, oh my God, how do you live like that? Like everything has to be always perfect. And I was like, there's no way I would be able to rest in that house. Like everything was white, the chairs, the drapery, just pure white. And I was like, oh my God. And that's why I tell my clients, you live in color. We live in color. It is wonderful to live in color. It will revive you. It'll make you happy. But to live with white, someone comes over with denim on, you're freaking out because they're going to sit on your furniture. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, get rid of white, please. That's my
I have a friend who happens to live in New York City, who has a whole assortment of white upholstered furniture in her living area. And it's gotten to the point where she's so preoccupied when anybody sits on it, especially if they might be drinking, or they might just have been on the train and who knows what's on their clothes or whatever. And when I show up at her house now, I just do her a favor and I just sit cross-legged on the floor. And that way we can have an actual conversation and move forward with whatever we're up to. So I can relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, that is not living. That's being held hostage.
Exactly.
Plastic covers that grandparents used to
Yeah.
put on their sofas back in the day.
There we go. Yeah, where are those plastic covers? Maybe that's the business we should all be in.
Dr. Sally, I'd like to ask you, your research emphasizes the psychological impact of color on mood. What are some colors that universally promote calm and reduce anxiety?
When we're thinking about the psychological implications of color, we need to think about the saturation and lightness or brightness of a color. Saturation is how grayed out a color is. So a khaki green, very hard word to say if you're from Boston like I am, but a khaki green is less saturated than an emerald green, for example. And lighter colors are colors that have more white in them. So when you want to put people in a positive, relaxed mood, you need to tune the saturation and lightness of colors. For a relaxed but somewhat alert mood, you want a color that's less saturated and lighter. When you use colors that are less saturated and lighter, you'll have calmer people. Now, one color that we need to think specifically about, the one hue that we need to think specifically about, is red. Our species over time has developed to find the color red very alerting. If you think about how we would have lived, I don't know, 10,000 generations ago or something on that order, when we saw red, it meant like we were bleeding, something we were trying to kill to eat was bleeding, or something similar. And since our ways of processing sensory information now are essentially the same as they were then, what we came to find highly activating then remains highly activating to us now. So red always needs to be used with care in environments.
I love that. That is very true. Ryan, your podcast About Place explores the evolving role of physical spaces. What are some important emerging trends in workplace design that prioritizes mental health?
Well, I think it's an exciting time, actually. There's such an emphasis on it. I mean, it's unfortunate that we need to provide as much attention to mental and emotional well-being as we are, but the good news is it's drawing to the forefront either new ideas or other ideas that I think have been really important. One that I know that Sally's one of the experts in is biophilic design, just thinking about how our indoor habitats can learn from and replicate what we experience outdoors that benefits us. There's, I think it's not a new, but I think in some ways still emerging practice called neuroaesthetics, which is in layman's terms, basically a look at how the aesthetic things around us impact how we think and how we feel. To get back to what I was mentioning earlier around relationships, we've kind of put together our own construct that we've just been calling a relationship-based work as a complement to what many workplace designers would know today, which is activity-based work. That's the practice of taking a look at all the activities and tasks that you might want to support within an environment and designing a range of spaces to support them. Well, we could do the same relationally. And in doing so, ask the question how we help people to thrive and experience a higher degree of belonging and a greater degree of comfort. That can include a wide array of interactions. It could be how to overcome some of the challenges of hierarchy, how to overcome some of the natural things that cause people to feel different or other than, the people around them. It can basically be helping teams that may only be interacting digitally to have experiences that are just really, really tough to have on video. But all in all, we think that there's a wide array of design choices that could be made with healthier relationships in mind. And in doing so, we can significantly improve people's well-being by improving their interactions with others.
I love that. I love that. Saana, if you had to curate a mental wellness textile palette, what three materials would be essential?
I can't tell you how much I love this question. Such a fun question. And creating the textile eye is all about curation. So I look at thousands of images of products, and I go to shows and I feel the products and I think, how are these going to live in someone's home and live in their life? Textiles are a way for us to express our individuality and express what's important to us. So for me, the first thing on my list is going to be a linen upholstery fabric. And I love linen because it's sustainable. It has a beautiful hand. It has a beautiful drape. I love the natural tones to it. I love the way it takes color. I did some work in my living room this year, and I was so lucky to find a secondhand custom sofa with a linen epinglay on it. And this epinglay, it's like a pile fabric, and it has a pattern to it and it has movement to it. And it's in this gorgeous kind of warm camel color. So for me now, this is the best thing ever. So heavy linen upholstery, have to have that. I also think about bedding and bedding fabric and how textiles really are like right next to our skin, right next to our bodies. So I'm also a fan of linen sheets, but I think I would say a medium thread count Italian percale. So crispy and so light and just works in any environment. And then since there's only three, the third fabric needs to be something that would really light up a space and bring a lot of joy and meaning, I think. And for me, those could be, it could be a wonderful handmade fabric or a hand woven item. Or lately, I've been really interested in wool felt because it's so cushiony and so it creates such a lovely sort of cocoon. So that third fabric is going to be something that's tactile and colorful and meaningful.
How do you feel about boucle?
I like boucle. I think boucle is it definitely was trendy. It got a lot of attention. I'm not such a fan of everything becoming covered in an ivory boucle, but it is an elegant choice. One of the things I like about boucle is that it brings texture and depth. And I think, especially now, what we're seeing is a lot of multicolor and colorful boucles that have some movement to them. And I do think that a textile that's got some multicolor is something that makes it easier to live with. It pulls a theme together. So I wouldn't throw the boucle out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Well, I like boucle. Unfortunately, I'm sitting on a boucle and it's white, but I mean, that's how I had to buy it. But the color is, it will be reupholstered to a color. And I love boucles that are in color. The ivory is, like I said, anything white and ivory in the house, I'm always like, I can't live here. I just
It's
want,
an opportunity lost, as I said before.
yeah, you should light up when you walk into your space. Now I want to turn to tables. What's one design element in your home or workspace that truly supports your mental wellness? Ryan, you're smiling. Let's go. Tell me.
Yeah, well, I happen to be in my home office today. And I remember in 2020 when I was doing like 10 hours of video calls a day, trying to answer questions from all of our customers, I started to get stressed to the point of like feeling lightheaded. And I decided to really double down on what I mentioned before, which is biophilic design. So if you could look around this room, there's lots and lots of plants, including a full trellis wall to my right.
That's what I was going to mention.
Well, and I've got lighting that mirrors, the color, temperature, and intensity of the sun, so circadian cycle. But my favorite things in this room are the aquariums. So if you've ever seen an aquarium in a dentist's office, it's because there's a belief, and I believe it, that staring at fish can lower your blood pressure. So I actually positioned an aquarium right behind my camera at that time, so that while I can definitely feel like I'm engaged in the call, I might be looking at something a little bit more calming. But for me in this space, I feed the fish, which I enjoy. The aquarium waters the plants. That consumes CO2. Elevated CO2 can decrease cognition. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm thinking and feeling better in this space as a result of the things I've surrounded myself with. And I actually keep a heart rate monitor, a CO2 monitor, just to kind of track my own. This isn't officially part of our research, but for me, I want to know about my own experience in this environment.
Love that. And I noticed all your plants and I'm like, if only I didn't have a brown finger, a brown thumb.
Well, here's what I've learned. Having too few plants is the problem. If you've got 3, they get neglected and die. If you've got 30, you can't avoid them. They're everywhere.
Okay, so I know what I need to do after this call.
I'm also calling in from my home studio, and I think that one of the things that I notice is when there is a lot of clutter, I feel stressed out. And unfortunately, that doesn't translate into me always not having a lot of clutter around me. I need to have a lot of things. Gail, I'm sure you do too, of samples and all the stuff that you sort of need to make everything work. And so I'm kind of obsessed with boxes and bins and things that allow me to hide the clutter. I picked up a habit when I worked for Barbara Barry in Los Angeles for a long time, and she puts everything into trays. And so you can immediately sort of take a thing that's just a pile, which is a mess, and put it into a tray. And it feels like I'll be getting to that later today or tomorrow or whatever. So for me, at least in a home office space, it really is that sort of commitment to having a system where you can support yourself by removing the clutter.
I love that. Dr. Sally, what about you?
Well, I was going to mention biophilic design, but Ryan beat me to it. And in the interest of talking about something a little different, what I'm going to say I find very positive around myself are my books, because I want to introduce the idea of how a space silently, non-verbally communicates to the person that owns it, the person in it, and anybody who visits it. That nonverbal communication, those silent signals, have a positive effect on you when they're saying something about you that you value. And it gets right down to it. I'm proud I have a PhD and that background. And my books remind me of that as I'm sitting here in my home office also working.
I just built a bookcase in my home a couple of months ago, and it's been a game changer because I had clutter everywhere. Like books were everywhere, and I was like, I need it all in one contained space and like organized. And it has been such a game changer for me. You know, it's the cobbler's kid. My clients'
Yeah.
places looks amazing. So it's getting here for me.
I'm just laughing, by the way, at the fact that Sally is known around the world as one of the experts in biophilic design, yet I somehow stole her thunder. So thank you, Sally, for letting me have that one.
I just want to go first next time.
There you go.
I love you all. You're so good. What's the most toxic design choice people unknowingly make? Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll talk about that. I think that people often really overlight places where they should be thinking more about relaxing and calming. We tend to, as a society, think bright is good, and bright isn't necessarily good. You need enough light to accomplish what you're doing. For example, I often walk into bathrooms, they could be in a commercial setting or somebody's home, and they're so brightly lit, like you could do surgery there. Is that really the kind of mood you should be creating in this sort of retreat place? So just because you can buy more light fixtures and you can buy the light bulbs to put in them doesn't necessarily mean you should use them.
Ryan, Asana, you want to chime in there?
I mean, I can add on because Sally prompted something that I've been thinking about. Not providing choice or some degree of control is a limiting thing. And I recognize that if you're someone who's managing a facility at a school or at an office or whatever, it can be a challenge. But my team, there were a few of us that got a chance to tour some of the leading office and other sites across Australia in September. And we were at one of the largest companies in Australia that has dedicated a wing of their building specifically to support neurodivergent individuals that they've hired into their cyber team. As you might know, those particularly on the autism spectrum are excellent at pattern recognition. So this organization went out and hired folks on the neurodivergent spectrum because of their talents and their gifts. And as a result, dedicated a whole wing of their space that includes a lot of control over the environmental factors, including the ability not always to control the lighting right around you, but at least to experience different levels of lighting for different activities. As you can imagine, everybody in the building wanted to work in that wing. Who doesn't want more control over the sound and the lighting and the other elements around you? And so if we can remind ourselves that providing people a degree of choice, and they might not even be entirely conscious of it, can help them to be better supported in certain activities. It's about their well-being, but it's also just about their ability to get stuff done effectively.
I think Ryan makes a good point about supporting neurodivergent individuals and about the fact that doing that often improves the experience of all the users, not just those who have one diagnosis or another, but all of us.
What's your guilty pleasure design trend?
First on this one. This
There
is
we go.
another really fun question. So for me, it's this sort of disco revival look. So
Really?
I am definitely enjoying this sort of, this louche, low 1970s brown velvet, a little bit of lame, maybe a little sparkle. It makes me dream about like hanging out with Grace Jones or Brian Ferry at the Limelight. So I know this is a whole different kind of look at wellness, but I think the idea of sort of allowing yourself to fantasize about these real fun things based on environments, I think is great.
I love that. Ryan or Dr. Sally, do you have one?
I mean, again, I'll tag on because I've got something related. While many of our brands like Herman Miller and Knoll are known for mid-century and other designs, there's a whole group of us, and I'm one of them, that has a love for conversation pits. Do you remember these? From
Yes.
like 70s?
You can make a real psychological case for a conversation pit if you ever need
We
to.
should. Well, part of it is, I think, whether it's residential design like living rooms or office designs for video, there's too many rooms where you walk in and everything is just pointed at a screen. It's like, well, what?
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
is this really the goal of the room?
Screen tyranny.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, the conversation pit is like the ultimate, reaction to that, and helping people to realize that we just want to sometimes look at each other, connect with each other, have a space where you clearly want to put the tech away and just grab a drink and hang out.
I would say I spend a lot of time battling trends. Just because a trend exists doesn't mean you as an individual or you as an organization should be pursuing it. To support the point that was made earlier, you need to think about users, their specific needs, their specific situations, and act accordingly. Every time I hear someone talking about doing something because it's a trend or whatever, I hear in my head, like my mother saying, if everybody else was jumping off the garage roof, would you jump off the garage roof too? So I think, sometimes a trend aligns with something that you enjoy, that's positive for you, etc. That's great. Then you should definitely pursue it. When the stuff that makes you feel good is on trend, you should be doing a lot of shopping as much as you can afford, gathering things up, because sooner or later whatever's on trend won't align with your personality, what you need to accomplish, etc. And when it doesn't, you can get out all those things you bought, you valued was on trend, and keep changing your place, because that's another thing that's great for us psychologically, to always be morphing where we are a little bit, not dramatically, not shockingly, but morphing it along.
I love that. You guys are great.
I love that too. I just want to chime in on this that, I've sort of think so much about trend also. And I love the idea of human creativity moving things forward aesthetically or in other ways. But I think it is so intelligent to say, oh, this is a trend right now. Will I still love it when it's no longer a trend?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I love flat boots. I'm going to wear flat boots no matter what. When flat boots are in with a round toe, I go out and I buy them. And when they're
Excellent.
no longer in, I don't care. I wear them anyway because they work for
Excellent.
me. So you can totally apply that thinking to your home. And I think that
Exactly.
the idea of having something that feels timely or new or exciting is great, but having it be on trend really is not the point.
Yeah, that's a
Exactly.
conversation I have with clients all the time. They're like, well, what's the latest trend? I'm like, I don't know, because if we do the trend, you're going to yell at me 6 months to a year from now that you wasted money and like your house is outdated. You don't want to do that. You want to find things that resonate with you, that somehow give you a great memory from your childhood, that you're like, this makes me feel safe. This makes me feel great. You just want classic and as much as possible timeless. And Ryan, going back to TVs, I'm working on a kitchen now, and my client goes, oh, we want a TV in the kitchen. And I was like, why? So now I'm trying to talk them off the ledge. I'm like, you don't need a giant TV in every room. Like, you need to said the conversation pit. You can talk. Like, you don't need a black hole in the wall to get the party started. Communicate with each other.
Well, particularly because what's it likely going to fall on other than something that's reminding us of all the bad things happening in the world? And so, board games and cocktails and all the other homework, all the other things that can happen in the kitchen are so much more meaningful.
Yes, yes, yes. What's one thing all of you would never allow in your own home? Anna, you go first.
This one's easy for me. Polyester or polyester blend sheets will never come through the door of my house.
Amen, sister. Amen. Ryan, Dr. Sally.
Well, I think we each have a dominant sense. In fact, the research shows we each have a dominant sense, which is the most direct route into our subconscious and has the most immediate effect on our emotional state, etc. And my dominant sense is olfactory, what things smell like. So I'm really averse to things that have an off odor, one that I don't personally enjoy smelling. So, I am averse to having anything in my home that doesn't smell pleasant to me.
For me, what came to my mind is I don't really enjoy sofas that are super deep. They can be
Okay.
fun for like laying back and watching Netflix or whatever, but a lot of our research is focused on inclusive design. And I think about like we wanted our home to be a place for a lot of gatherings. So when I think of people that are shorter, I think we have a lot of older people in our lives. My parents are about to turn 80. There's just certain furniture that has a nice aesthetic, but is not healthy or comfortable for people in terms of seated posture. So I'm not a super big fan of these sofas that are super deep, that are difficult to sit upright in, that are difficult to get out of. I know they can look cool, but I wouldn't put one in my living room.
So I will say there was a company I used to work for. I'll just give their initials RH. And
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
yes, and they have like classic. I forgot the levels, but it's like classic, which is like what we grew up with. Then there's like a mid level, and then there's the deepest level. And it was so hilarious that people always wanted the deepest level. And my thing when I would speak to customers, I'm like, your parents are coming over. You need to think about your parents and your grandparents. And I said, while it's great, like you said, Netflix and chill, but on a day to day, trying to like sit and enjoy your home, you don't always want to feel like you have to like jump into your furniture. You want to be able to sit upright and be okay with it. And yes, you can have enough space where if you want to take a nap, it's fine. But if you get the deepest sofa, then you have like 30 pillows just so you can sit back to where you normally need to be. So I'm like, just get the right size from the beginning.
It's interesting that you bring up the deep furniture because I'm a person who's actually pretty tall. I'm 6'2". And when I was first setting up housekeeping, my ex-husband and I, he's relatively tall also, we set up a house that felt great to us and it was not pleasant for others. And this was a good lesson in you are not everybody. There are a range of shapes, capabilities out there, but like we had a deep sofa. We actually put things in our kitchen cabinets. And when my sister, who's your sort of standard height, came over the first time, she couldn't even reach stuff that she needed because of the way we had arranged things. And so we moved everything down. Eventually, we bought furniture at a different scale, as things wore out and we could afford it. But, I think that that's something that everybody has to come to grips with. Like, just because you like it doesn't mean it's what you should do. Just because you like it, that has no connection with whether anybody else will ever find it pleasant to interact with you. So to learn empathy and getting into other people's shoes.
Yeah, I love that. And the other
Yeah,
thing about the furniture was like how low it was. And I'm like,
Well, that's another whole problem.
it's like, I was like, so you have
it
to
is.
roll and push yourself off the ground to stand up. I was like, you got to think about the people coming to your home. You literally can't
I,
have it that low.
right. And you have to think about like special circumstances that might make things difficult too. Like someone who's 9 months pregnant doesn't want to be that low. Someone who has a broken leg because they were skiing, they don't want to be that low. So you have to, empathize with more long term conditions and also think short term things that could be up with people.
Well, and an older person has to be able to plant their heels behind their knee in order to be able to push off. So you get too low, it's not possible. One of the things we get a lot is across all the different types of space we support, we're often asked for spaces that are more hospitality like. And I
Yes.
know that often refers to a certain aesthetic, but for us, we're usually thinking first that means people have to feel safe in
Mm-hmm.
that space. Like that's the origin of hospitality. But second, it does need to be designed with the thought that this isn't just for the person who owns the space. You create that sense of ownership and that sense of permission by having spaces that people feel really like they can easily use. So for me, this is all about being hospitable.
You're absolutely right. That was a big learning lesson for me being at that organization because of just watching the various people. And there was one family, like Dr. Sally, who was super tall. And there was a sofa in the back that was so deep that anytime they came in, they would just sit there and like even their teenagers who were like they were like almost at 7 feet, sat there without a problem. It hit right behind their knee. It was comfortable. They could get up and out. Anyone else, it was hilarious to watch families come in where it was like, and I'm going to date myself here, like they were Lily Tomlin sitting there in the big giant chair. He couldn't touch
I
the
was
furniture.
actually going to bring that up. There's a term for when the furniture is too big for the people who are in it, and it's called infantilizing, like turning somebody into an infant. And that's a if you just think about the word, you can see how bad it is from a psychological perspective. Like you feel like you can't use the space, like you don't belong in it, etc. Psychologists have a term.
We want to leave our listeners with real actionable advice. If someone wants to make one simple change today to improve mental wellness through design, what would you recommend? Dr. Sally first, please.
I would say be true to yourself. Like we were talking about before, don't think about trends. Think about your experience, your positive previous experiences with design, within design spaces, etc., and act accordingly as your resources allow.
Ryan?
Yeah, I would say focus a lot of your attention on interactions, interpersonal interactions, not just activities. So just like we said with that dining room, is it a place to eat? Yes. Is it also a place to, have a important conversation with the family or to host other people? Across any of these types of spaces, the more we can do to nurture healthy, positive relationships, the better off we'll all be.
For me, I would encourage people to look at the items that they have around them as things that are full of life and energy. And I would suggest looking at handmade things and going to a crafts fair, finding a fair trade organization that sells handwoven textiles, really bringing in the work of another human and appreciating the handwork and the importance of that human made item, and going ahead and working through your space and your home and getting rid of the things that are not nurturing to you in that way, and slowly over time replacing them with things that have that sort of meaning.
And one last question before we go. What's one space, whether from childhood or adulthood, that instantly made you feel at peace, and why?
I used to go to a place at the lake in my hometown
Mm-hmm.
that was a sort of platform, a wood platform that had been built over the water in the lake, and I found that a positive experience, very relaxing. And now that I've been to school for way too many years, I know some of the reasons why. I was hearing the fractal sounds of the water, seeing the fractal movements of the water around me. I was around wood, which gets into biophilic design, which Ryan and I have been talking a little bit about. It was sheltered in that there was like an overhang. I had lots of exposure to natural light, etc. It was a wonderful place to be.
I'll talk about my grandmother's living room.
Mm.
So I was raised by hippies, and we really lived in kind of crazy environments. We moved from house to house a lot. And my grandmother lived in Florida. She lived in a mid-century kind of low slung house, and she always not a woman of means, but she wanted to be, and she brought this elegance into her home in all the choices of the items that she would kind of curate and put together. And this house had like a white terrazzo floor and this sort of sunken living room, and she just put things together in a way that had such a zing and an elegance to it. And while it wasn't necessarily comfortable, she did live in the space. And she was the one that taught me that you could like take a can of tuna fish and put it on a gold rimmed plate and you would have an experience. So the idea for me of being in the space, it always felt like it had a kind of quiet to it and an elevated quality and a mix of personal items that she had collected. She was an army wife and had lived overseas during her lifetime, and really like she had collected items. So she brought it all together in a way that when you stepped in, you thought, oh, this is enveloping. I'm in a space, and it just, I'll never forget it.
I'm going to go super like contemporary. If you've heard the concept of a third place, this is Ray
Oh, yeah.
Oldenburg's framework that, home's our first place, work's our second place, but a good third place should be someplace near your home where you really connect with people that maybe you wouldn't normally spend time with. And for many years, for me, it's been my local brewery called Brewery Vivant in Grand Rapids. It was started by a former Herman Miller employee. It's the first LEED certified brewery in the world. It's just got this incredible architectural character. And then during the pandemic, when we were in quarantine, there were a group of us that decided that no matter what the weather, no matter what was going on, we were going to sit on their patio. And I'm talking like 12 degrees in January in Grand
Yeah.
Rapids, Michigan,
It can be
and
cold in
share a
Michigan.
beer. And I am there a lot. But for me, though, like that level of attachment to that place is someplace that I find to be unfortunately very rare, particularly in our kind of suburban sprawl. But it's a place that I love.
I love that. I love that. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming on today. Dr. Sally, Saana, and
Thank you.
Ryan, you have all been great. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having us.